At this time, I would like to remind everyone to silence their cell phones if you haven't already done that. This time, I would also ask that the court reporter go on the record. This meeting of the Omaha Board of Education will please come to order. Roll call, please.
Fay.
Here.
Godding.
Here.
America.
Present.
Scanlon. Snow.
Here.
Underwood. Vargas.
Here.
Wayne.
Present.
Williams. 6 present. 6 present.
Please let us know if you have a hard time hearing us. Thank you. At this time, we will introduce those present for the record, beginning with the Council for the Administration of Omaha Public Schools.
Thank you. I'm Heidi Gutau-Fox with Baird Home Law Firm, and I'm representing OPS Administration. I have with me Sarah McHugh, who's my colleague and also an attorney at Baird Home, representing the administration, and we have Charles Wakefield at our table, the Chief HR Officer for OPS.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Rick Wade, attorney law firm Norbian Wade. Thank you, Representative Daughter.
Mr. Wade, if you could get the microphone over, that would be helpful.
I'm sorry to ask you to repeat, but do you mind repeating that into the microphone? You'll need to, I'm sorry, turn it on.
There we go.
Okay.
All right. Third time's a charm. My name is Rick Wade. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Norbian Wade, and I'm here representing Judy Souter for this particular hearing. Thank you.
All right. This hearing before the Board of Education of Douglas County School District 0001 will be held on the cancellation of a teacher's contract and is being held at the request of Mrs. Judy Souter. This hearing will be conducted in accordance with the Nebraska teacher tenure statutes. If Ms. Souter requests, this hearing may be held in closed session. Do you wish to have this hearing held in a public session or in a closed session?
Open.
In an open session? Okay. This hearing will proceed as follows. First, Ms. Gutau-Fox, representation, OPS Superintendent and Administration, will be given an opportunity to make an opening statement. Second, Ms. Souter or her representative, Mr. Wade, will be given an opportunity to make an opening statement. Third, Ms. Gutau-Fox, representation of OPS Superintendent and Administration, will present evidence concerning the decision to recommend cancellation of Ms. Souter's contract. If the evidence is by live testimony, Ms. Gutau-Fox will first question the witness. After this questioning is completed, the teacher or her representative, Mr. Wade, may question the witness. When questioning is completed by the parties, the board members may ask the questions of the witness. If the questions asked by board members on have any additional questions which the parties wish to ask, either may ask additional questions. Fourth, Mrs. Souter or her representative, Mr. Wade, will be given an opportunity to put on evidence. The questioning of any witnesses called by the teacher shall be completed in the same manner as that followed for the administration's witnesses. Fifth, Mrs. Gutau-Fox will be given an opportunity to present any rebuttal evidence. If the administration presents rebuttal evidence, Mr. Wade will be given an opportunity to present surrebuttal evidence. Questioning of any witnesses called in rebuttal or surrebuttal shall be completed in the same manner as that followed above. Sixth, after completion of the presentation of all evidence, Ms. Gutau-Fox will be given an opportunity to make a closing statement to the Board of Education. Seventh, after completion of the administration's closing statements, the Teachers' Council will be given an opportunity to make a closing statement also. Eighth, following the completion of the closing statements, the board members will deliberate in executive session concerning their decision on the administration's recommendation. Ninth, after deliberation in executive session, the board members will return to public session and vote on their decision. 10th, the teacher and Mr. Wade will be notified in writing of the board's findings and determinations. 11th, the hearing will not be conducted according to the strict rules of law relating to the examination of witnesses or the presentation of evidence. Any relevant evidence will be admitted by the presiding officer if it is the sort of evidence on which responsible persons are accustomed to rely in the conduct of serious affairs. Representing the Omaha Board of Education for the record is Mrs. Neelis Brash. Are there any questions before this hearing begins?
No, not on my part.
No, we just have a couple of procedural matters.
Okay, if there are any procedural matters that need to be taken care of at this time, go ahead and share those.
Okay. First, and Mr. Wade and I spoke, and we would ask to have the witnesses sequestered besides our clients, Ms. Souter and Mr. Wakefield, just for the purposes of this proceeding and the integrity of the proceeding.
That is correct.
Okay, so there's no objections?
No objection to that. No, and I would request the same.
Okay.
You can stay.
Is there a motion from the body to sequester the witnesses?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So there's a motion by Ms. Fay and a second by Mr. Vargas to sequester the witnesses. Are there any questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Fay,
Aye.
Goding,
Aye.
America,
Aye.
Snow, Vargas,
Aye.
Wayne.
Aye.
6 ayes.
Motion carries.
Point of order, can we just make sure the witnesses understand what sequester? Point of order, can we just make sure the witnesses understand sequestering and what it means, and not to discuss the case out in the hallway, but and all that information, just so they know there's a purpose for sequestering, and not everybody is legalese, so make sure they understand it.
Very good. Yes, we will make sure they're informed. Sean, will you let them know that? Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other preliminary matters?
Yes, Mr. Wade and I also spoke about exhibits, and we'd like to offer our exhibits at the beginning to kind of speed things along here today. And so I would first move to, there's a binder in front of you, and please don't be alarmed, I won't go through all of these today. But this is the administration's exhibits 101 through 199. And we would offer those into evidence for the record today.
Are there any objections?
I just object to Exhibit 195 because it's a summary of what will take place here today, or is hoped to take place here today, which I think should be for the members of the board actually to hear rather than to read a summary. I would stipulate that that particular exhibit meets the statutory requirements of proper notice and information as required by statute to the person, Mrs. Souter.
I would just add that we actually aren't going to read that letter into evidence, but I think as part of the statutory requirement that we are required to provide it, we would like it to be contained within as an exhibit to the hearing. So if there's any record on appeal, it would be in there.
If I may, could I respond?
So
I'm sorry. Could I respond just for a minute? I have no problem stipulating, and then it can be retained, but not taken into closed session with the board members to actually review as a part of the review of the testimony or what the evidence is supposed to be. I think it should be based solely upon what's presented here today.
So you're okay with Exhibit 195?
No, I'm not okay. I just stipulate that it should be included in the record, but not made a part of the documents that the board members review in the closed session to review the case.
And do you have a response for
Yeah,
that?
I would just say, I mean, we're required by statute to provide that. It's a standard letter that we provide in these cases, and I think it's a part of statutorily of these proceedings, and so that it should be considered to be an exhibit.
So at this time, I would entertain a motion to receive Exhibits 101 through 199.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Since we need a motion and board action to receive the exhibits, once the motion is made and seconded, can we then ask questions about and discuss? Okay, so I move that we receive exhibits through 199.
So there's a motion to receive Exhibits 101 through 199. Is there a second?
Second.
So motion by Ms. Fay and second by Mr. Snow. Are there questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
So I just need to I need to understand and what is your concern about this one particular exhibit? I understand why you want it in there, and I guess I need to understand why you don't.
My point is that it is a summary of what the best
I need you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Sure. I believe, well, it's a summary of the best case scenario for the administration, and I don't think the board should have that opportunity or have that obligation to review a summary of what's going to take place. Yeah, I think the board should base its decision upon what actually occurs at the hearing, the testimony of the witnesses, the receipt of exhibits that are relevant, and be given the proper weight as a relevant exhibit. My concern is that it basically spells out what the administration believes the whole case is about, and I think it just taints the whole process. And I stipulate that they've satisfied the statutory obligation, and we've done that many times in hearings, and I'd like to assume we could do it here again.
Okay, let me ask another question then. So you stated that you've submitted this type of exhibit in previous employee hearings, and you're saying it is not usual, or
Well,
in your experience?
In my experience for 34 years, it has not been the norm. I don't recall. It's been some time since I've had hearing before the Omaha Public School Board, but in other districts in the state, I've done the stipulation and it's been accepted.
Okay, thank you.
This time I would like to ask Ms. Needless-Brush to give us an opinion.
It would be my recommendation that the board receive Exhibit 195 for the value of which it is, which is a document that was given to the parties prior to this hearing today as part of the record, just simply for that fact.
Mr. Snow.
Could you, Ms. Needless-Brush, could you explain what this document actually is, though?
Certainly. I believe
The 195. Well, isn't 195 the document on our left hand when we open our book? I think that's the same document.
It is the same,
Okay.
yeah. We served it all. This is how we serve everything upon the petition, upon the teacher.
Okay.
so. As I understand it, this is a common document that is given to the teacher upon proceeding towards a hearing to lay out the school district's evidence. And it's given in every situation for teacher termination hearings.
Thank you.
Mr. Wayne.
So we have Exhibit 195, and we have a exact replica of that in our folder, also for the record. And I'm not sure why we have two, but
I can address it. This is how we serve. We're required by statute to serve the letter with the exhibits. And so when we made them administratively, that's how they just copied how we serve things upon Mr. Wade as we're required by statute.
why is it
And so-
not listed as an exhibit?
Pardon?
Why is the separate one not listed as an exhibit?
It's a copy of 195 because we serve him a letter on this on top, and then we have to send him all the exhibits. So we need it to also be an exhibit. So if you want to pull the one out of that was just an administrative copying. I said make a set of exactly what we give the teacher, and wanted you to have that. And I would stipulate that it is just our notice to the teacher, and that we still have to present our evidence and our testimony today. So.
In fact, I'd just like to point out, it's not supposed to be part of the evidence. It's the notice requirement as required by statute to advise the teacher of what the allegations are, what the exhibits will be, and who the witnesses will be, and a summary of their testimony. That's a notice requirement. It's not part of the hearing evidence.
And my concern is just that if this goes up on appeal, that we have it in the record. So the way these go up on the record as you read the decisions are that they take all the exhibits up. So,
Mr. Wayne.
But if we're worried about appeals, and what's in the record, then isn't the simple answer to move forward on this, allow both councils to stipulate on the record of the dates and times in which notice, time, and placement of the hearing, and that the constitutional requirements of the state were fulfilled in this instance, and then we can remove this document and no longer have it be an issue. Because if it's just a notice document, which is what it seems to be for me, and almost like a pretrial conference document, if they're willing to stipulate to the constitutional requirements or statutory requirements, then we don't need this document, and it'll still be in the record that you met those statutory and constitutional requirements. But what will not be in the record is legal arguments, summaries of testimony, and those type of things which we're supposed to gain here today.
and I could maybe simplify it if we could just stipulate that if it goes up on appeal, it would be part of the record, but not the exhibits that go with them. So I think it has to be in the record on appeal.
I think it has to be in the record. That's why I said
Yeah.
stipulate that it can be used, but withdrawn or taken out from the notebook.
And that's fine with me. I just want to make sure we have a clear record for appeal.
So with that, may I make a motion to amend? Well, Mrs. Fay can do it.
Right, I need to ask for Mrs. Fay to amend her motion.
I would like to amend my motion to include 101 through 199 with the exception of 195.
Is there a second?
Second.
Well, it has to.
Seconded by
Aye.
Mr. Snow to the amended. Okay, so there's an amended motion to accept exhibits 101 through 199 with the exception of 195, and 195 would be on the record as we previously discussed for appeals. Is there any other discussion on that? Hearing none, roll call, please.
I do have a question.
Sorry, Mr.
Madam
Wade.
President. I have not looked through all of these, but my only question is there any letters in here that would be consistent of settlement negotiations?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Hearing no other questions, roll call, please.
Gadding,
Aye.
America,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Vargas,
Aye.
Wayne,
Aye.
Fay.
Aye.
6 aye.
I think at this time, if we can get our binders opened and take out 195, that would be great.
You want to do yours?
May I make a statement for the record just because of the notion of appeals? I guess I would say, Madam President, if you would state on the record, let the record reflect that we've collected all 195s and they're no longer part of the record. I know, I'm sorry. Madam President, will you state for the record that we've taken out 195 from our binder and has been turned in as no longer part of the record in our binder?
So at this time, we have collected all of the exhibits 195. This document will be included on appeal, if that occurs, as stipulated by both parties.
So stipulated, yes.
Yes, so stipulated.
Do you have any additional preliminary matters?
I do not, Your Honor.
Okay. So with that,
Your Honor, I do, and I think we've discussed this, and it might be a good time to get the other exhibits in as well. Ms. Utah Fox and I have also spoken about all the exhibits. Maybe it's a good time preliminarily to also offer my exhibits. It's not my case right now, but if you would like them all offered at the same time, we could get that out of the way.
that's fine. That we didn't have it arranged that way, but that's absolutely fine.
I don't have quite as pretty as a Oh, could you? That'd be great. At this time, then, Madam Chairman and board members, I would offer Exhibit 1 through 28 on behalf of Ms. Judy Stauder. I believe, as I say, I provided these just very recently to Ms. Gutau Fox, so I think she has them, and I think we've talked about the same arrangement for these particular exhibits.
Okay, so Mrs. Gutau Fox, do you have any objections?
No objection.
Okay. All right, so at this time, I would entertain a motion to receive Exhibits 1 through 28.
So move.
Second.
So motion by Mr. Snow, second by Ms. Fay to receive Exhibits 1 through 28. Are there any questions? Mr. Wayne?
Are we expecting any other exhibits throughout this process?
No.
I'm sorry, excuse me, sir?
Are we expecting any other exhibits throughout this process?
No, not on Ms. Soder's behalf.
So I'm understanding the record. 29 through 100 is non-existent in this file.
I know that's a little awkward. I do appreciate the fact that the administration, Ms. Gutau Fox, did prepare the 100 on, and I prepared the earlier numbers. There may be two more, so there may be two more, but I do not have the additional exhibits to make up that difference. But I used the lower numbers because Ms. Gutau Fox had used the higher numbers.
And I appreciate that. The only reason why I bring it up is because there's been 4 times we've mentioned appeal, and they don't have the luxury of being here, so I want to make sure the record is clear for them.
Thank you.
I think that would be a good idea.
So let the record reflect at this time that Exhibits 29 through 99 are not being submitted. Correct? Okay. So we had a motion from Ms. Fay,
No.
second.
Mr. Snow.
Mr. Snow, seconded by Ms. Faith. Is that correct? To receive respondents' exhibits 1 through 28. There are no other comments. Roll call, please.
America,
Aye.
Snow, Vargas,
Aye.
Wayne,
Aye.
Fay,
Aye.
Gadding.
Aye.
6 ayes.
Motion carries. All right, with that, we will begin with opening statements, starting with the administration. Ms. Gutell-Fox.
Thank you, and thank you for your time today. At Omaha Public Schools, the superintendent and the administration expect that school counselors are the heart of the school. They're the heart of each school. A nurturing counselor who provides life skills teaching, counsels children, readily provides resources to those in need, actively assists with SAT teams for children needing additional help, and builds relationships and fosters communication within the building to help the principal and assistant principal and other teachers in providing a safe learning environment for our children. You will learn from the testimony and evidence today that in this case of Mrs. Souter, unfortunately, the opposite had been occurring. We will have 5 witnesses testify today. Ms. McLeon Larson, who's a principal at Boyd Elementary School, Nanette Beller, who's a principal at Columbian Elementary, Cassandra Smith, who's the principal at Gilder, Dr. Nancy Bond, the school counseling supervisor at Gilder, and Charles Wakefield, the chief human resources officer. And their testimony and exhibits will prove that the administration was actually having to take steps to shield children and parents from having to deal with Mrs. Souter in this case, and to take steps to protect them from harmful effects of interactions, breach of confidentiality, a disrespectful manner towards them, a dangerous failure to communicate with the building administration, and just a general lack of good judgment and a caring attitude. You'll hear testimony that even after years in the same building, Mrs. Souter did not know the names of the children. You'll hear testimony that of issues of out-of-control classrooms, children hitting and kicking each other. Again, breach of confidentiality, parents pulling their children out of her class or counseling, a failure to provide resources, and comments that are inappropriate, such as asking a mother if her child had been deprived of oxygen at birth, or other comments that made children cry. Based on the evidence and testimony that you'll hear today, we will be asking that you uphold the recommendation of the administration. As you know, the board may vote to terminate a contract of employment for just cause, and this is defined by statute as incompetency, which includes but is not limited to demonstrated deficiencies or shortcomings in knowledge of subject matter, teaching, or administrative skills, neglect of duty, and unprofessional conduct. We will present evidence today that clearly establishes just cause. Accordingly, at the close of the evidence, we will ask that you uphold the recommendation of the superintendent and the administration in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wade.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Yes, it's my privilege to represent Ms. Judy Souter, and I think what you will hear today and what you will see in the evidence, the exhibits today, as an employee who has been a very good and honored and worthy OPS employee for 18 years. I think what you will see and what you will basically hear from Ms. Souter herself is that she has been involved in many, many things that have been very important to the betterment of all the students in the OPS system. She has been at another school. She's gotten good evaluations. It is unusual and interesting, I believe, that this year, the 2015-16 year, for some reason things kind of went astray or awry, and as a result of having some deficiencies in the competencies that are actually part of the evaluation tool, she was put on an informal plan of improvement and a formal plan of improvement, which basically lasted a short period of time and for which there was improvement, but not significant enough improvement in the eyes of the administration to allow Ms. Souter to continue. The point is that I think you will see documents that show that she's a very effective teacher, that she was an effective teacher until there was a change of the arrangement of her teaching setting and the environment at the first part of this year, for which she did not get any instruction or any time to prepare for, except one day she was told that there would be a whole different arrangement for her teaching style and her teaching environment. So it's been it was a very hectic period of time. And I think that's very important because I don't think you'll see someone, if you look at the whole overall teacher and the performance and the positive contribution, I don't think you'll see a teacher that is a lost cause and should not be retained by OPS. And so I would ask this board to not cancel nor terminate her employment, cancel her contract, because I think it will be a big loss for OPS and the system. Counselors are important, and you'll see much evidence that she has been very important to a lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to call on the administration, Ms. Gutierrez Fox, to introduce any exhibits, and I think you've said you don't have any additional ones, and to call any witnesses which support your recommendation. This time, I guess I would ask, before the first witness is called, if all other witnesses have been sequestered.
Yes, they have.
Okay, so I'll call upon you to introduce witnesses.
Our first witness is Miss Brianna McLeon Larson. If you want to, I'll have you sit up here.
Point of order for the record, is Charles Wakefield a witness?
We stipulated at the beginning that as a party, he's representing the administration, just as Mrs. Suter is a party. So Mr. Wade and I had stipulated that we could have the parties remain in the room, just as we would in a normal proceeding.
Is that your understanding, sir?
I think that would be appropriate in this particular case. Thank you.
Sure, it's clear for the record.
Thank you.
Can you repeat your name for the record?
Brianna McLeod Larson.
And is your microphone on?
Brianna McLeod Larson.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Larson, could you tell us what your current position is with OPS?
I am currently a principal in another elementary school, Boyd Elementary School.
And how long have you been in that position?
I have just started my second year.
Okay. And what position did you hold before that?
Before that, I was an assistant principal for 4 years, also in OPS at Picard Elementary School.
Okay. And before that?
I worked out of the TAC building. I had a position called Safe, Secure, and Disciplined Schools Facilitator.
And what did that entail?
Well, I worked with a team, and we focused on helping schools build positive climates and cultures.
And have you had other positions at OPS?
Previously, I was a school counselor, and I was also a teacher.
Okay. How long were you school counselor at OPS?
7 years,
And how about a teacher?
3 years.
Okay. And can you tell us just briefly what your educational background is?
Sure. I've done all my work at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I have my undergraduate is in elementary education. Then I have a master's in elementary counseling and an endorsement in administration.
Okay. And could you describe what your current duties or responsibilities are? Well, let me back up. Do you have a school counselor at your current school?
We do have a full-time counselor.
Okay. And what are your duties in relationship to a school counselor as a principal typically?
Sure. First and foremost, of course, we need to communicate, and it would be helpful for me and my responsibility to make sure that she understands and has access to the long-range plans and understands the standards of what she's supposed to teach to the students, as well as how to provide supports for staff, students, and families.
Okay. And what are your expectations of a school counselor, having been one and now supervising one?
Sure. I really liked what you said earlier about the counselor being the heart of the school, and that is how I would summarize that position. That person should be warm, approachable, someone that everyone feels safe working with.
And what were some typical duties as a school counselor when you held that role, or even at your school now?
Sure. As a school counselor, first and foremost, we had guidance lessons, and that way we could be preventive and help kids build skills. And then I would respond to students if they were having difficulty with maybe anxiety. And I also helped families access resources in the community if they needed them. And then also, as the counselor at that time, the teacher was in the classroom, so part of that was professional development on my part so the teacher could see strong teaching skills.
And was there a point in this, in regard to Mrs. Souter, that you were asked to conduct an observation?
I was asked to.
Okay, and who asked you to do that?
Dr. Nancy Bond.
All right. And did you know Mrs. Souter before?
I don't think we had ever spoken, but I do think we were counselors at the same time.
Okay. And did
But
you,
I don't know her.
Okay. If you want to turn, how many observations did you perform?
One.
Okay. And if you want to turn in the exhibit book in front of you to Exhibit 162. Okay. And can you tell me what Exhibit 162 is?
This is my classroom observation record that I completed that one observation that I did.
Okay. And do you try to take notes contemporaneously during the observation?
Yes.
Okay. And does Exhibit 162 accurately reflect what you observed?
Yes.
And so just in your own words, without reading verbatim, can you tell us what you did observe? First of all, what date was that?
April 11th, 2016.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about, tell the board about your observations and impressions?
Sure. Immediately upon entering the classroom, a word I would use to describe it was chaotic. Students were not sitting safely in their seats. There didn't appear to be procedures or routines for how students should be raising their hand. They certainly were not treating Ms. Souter as what should be the most important part of the room. They were focusing on one another. They were talking about things that were completely off topic and being negative towards each other when some students were trying to be positive.
Can you talk specifically as to the instruction, the lesson and instruction that you observed?
There was very, very little instruction that occurred in the time that I was there. She did have a video showing on the smart board, which I believe is part of the curriculum. And then she did have some books that were talked about briefly, but the bulk of the time was spent attempting to manage the classroom or attempting to get the class focused on her.
And you mentioned curriculum. How does the curriculum work for the school counselors at OPS?
School counselors are provided curriculum. They receive that through Dr. Bond.
Okay. And do you know what that consists of? Is it just a name of a lesson, or are there materials, or how does that work?
It is detailed,
Okay.
and materials that support the lesson are provided as well.
Okay. Thank you. Can you speak as to the behavior of the children while you're in there in classroom control?
There wasn't any classroom control. I can't stress that enough. Students appeared to really just be doing whatever they wanted to be doing. They were fighting with each other, arguing with each other, and just talking about things that weren't related to the lesson and asking questions like, can I just go sit over there and read a book? Things like that, they were not engaged with the lesson whatsoever.
Okay. And could you also talk about what you observed as far as like the tone of voice or interaction with the children?
Sure. Like I said, the counselor, as I was watching her, I just kept thinking the counselor is supposed to be the heart of the school, and this person was not very warm at all. She was sharp in the words and her tone. She was saying things like, I noted she was telling someone to sit down, but it was sit down, like that. Or she would say, did I ask you to yell, or did I ask you to think? Is how it sounded when she was communicating with the kids. And it did appear that she was very frustrated the entire time I was there.
As far as the children, safety of the children, did you have any concerns?
I did have concerns. Like I said, just from initially walking in the door and seeing that the students were leaning over their desks, they weren't sitting flat in their seats. I saw kids, like I said, fighting with each other, putting their hands on each other, and I really wanted to be an observer and let the lesson happen the way that it would happen, but I did a fair amount of looking at kids and saying, so I was stopping things from happening as well. Would you like me to give an example of
That'd be
Okay,
helpful.
sure. So, for example, there was a time when Ms. Souter had attempted to motivate the kids to follow the expectations, and she said she was going to call a group up to the smart board, and she was looking for a quiet group. So one little guy in the class said to his team, okay, I want to get called on, this is what we have to do, and gave him a really nice example of how they could get picked. And then they started making fun of him and kicking him under the table. And it's a range of things I saw. From that to the most severe thing I saw was when they were lining up, I saw a student pull his own T-shirt over his head and then just start punching. And he was landing punches, and I had to get up and stop that. And all of these things were happening. It wasn't as if I was closer and Miss Souter was getting ready to address it. It appeared that she didn't notice it at all. And if she did notice it, she certainly was not addressing it in any way.
There's another section on the observation as far as managing student behavior that discussed touching the children.
Sure.
Can you describe what you observed?
Sure. So like I said, she did seem frustrated throughout the entire lesson, and as the lesson went on, she appeared to be more frustrated, and her attempts weren't working, and she actually resorted to, at one point, she would be grabbing the kids. She did grab a student in the upper arm with both of her hands and was pulling that student down, and then she grabbed kids by the wrist to try to make them sit. I saw both of those things. It was very concerning to the point I thought if this were 1 degree more severe, I would have to call CPS. It was the worst I've ever seen.
You also have down in section 3D as far as instruction itself. Can you tell me what you observed on that in that regard?
Sure. When we're watching teachers, we want, of course, the students to do the bulk of the work. And when she's presenting things to students, they really didn't have a chance to think about, process, apply things. She would ask a question. They had a book or a picture of a person doing a different career, and she would say, and they were supposed to know which section the careers would go into. And so someone would hold their book up. She would say, what is your book about? And sometimes they wouldn't even answer. And she would say, oh, that's a carpenter. A carpenter is this category. And then the next student would hold it up, and she would do that again. She said, okay, that's health sciences. Health sciences has to do with jobs where human sciences, she did all that talking. So there wasn't any rigor for the kids at all.
So after you left the classroom observation, what did you do?
To say, I left the classroom, and before I left, I did have a very brief conversation with Miss Souter, and I did want to share that because when I talked to her, she said, I was hoping they'd get it, but it just wasn't going to work. I've tried to get Rye on ADHD meds, but it hasn't happened. And just the way she said that, I felt like she wasn't reflective or taking any ownership. She also didn't say to me, I tried this and it didn't work. So I didn't feel like she was in a place to grow. And so I was very concerned that I didn't think it was going to get better. And I was rattled is a word I would use. After I left, it was so chaotic in the room, and I was genuinely worried for kids. So on my way back to Boyd, I did call Dr. Bond and share with her. I just wanted her to know right away that it was as bad as it was, in case there needed to be something else done more immediately.
And if you want to turn then to Exhibit 163, which is the next one.
I'm sorry, can I just ask a quick question? This wasn't at Boyd. I'm sorry. I just need to understand.
Right. I went to her school to
Which
visit.
was
Gilder.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Which exhibit? I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry, 163. Can you tell me what Exhibit 163 is?
This is an email I sent to Dr. Bond along with my observation.
Okay, and can you read the email into the record?
Sure. Hello, Dr. Bond. I have attached my notes from the observation. My overall experience was as follows. The classroom was dangerous due to the lack of procedures and routines. There were no established expectations for behavior. Students were not sitting safely in their seats, and there were hands-on behaviors. The students were not engaged even when it was their turn to be at the smart board with her. There was no rigor in the lesson as Ms. Souter did most of the talking and answered questions for the students. She did make unsuccessful attempts to redirect the class and implement engaging strategies. I was especially concerned when she grabbed the same student multiple times. Let me know if there is anything I can clarify.
And it looks like, did you send that the same evening after the observation?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes? For
Oh,
that?
yes.
Can you respond?
Okay, thank you. Would you allow your own children to have been in this classroom?
No,
And do you
absolutely not.
do you believe Mrs. Souter should be returned to her position as a school counselor?
No.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Wade will ask you some
Okay.
may ask some questions.
So at this time, we'll allow Mr. Wade to ask questions.
Thank you. I can hear the concern in your voice today, and I note that in looking at Exhibit 162 that you have concerns, but I mean, about to contact CPS, you actually said that today. Why didn't you put that on the exhibit on the observation record? I mean, that's pretty strong. I don't see that strong on here.
Sure. It is. I'm just sharing it now that it was something that crossed my mind.
Okay, but I guess what I'm also seeing is that there were concerns that you had in the way the lesson was delivered. But it appears that you also note that she does have control as what of the class at times. So, I mean, is it unusual, totally unusual for a class to occasionally get out of control?
Would you show me where you, because I would not have been trying to communicate that she had control of the class at any point.
Okay, I'll look it over again here. I'm trying to read it again.
Sure.
Could you speak into the microphone? We just want to make sure.
Okay. Now you say she sounded frustrated. I'm just reading this. Okay, people are not listening. I want everyone to come up to the carpet. This is by Miss Souter, and stop. Okay, not unless you're quiet. Sit down, sharp. It sounded sharp, like sit down. Appears frustrated. That doesn't mean she doesn't have control, does it? Or there's not.
It does.
It does?
It does. It was an attempt. It was an attempt on this part for her to redirect, maybe give the kids a brain break. Sometimes movement will help, but it didn't. It wasn't. She did these things, and then the classroom came back together as a group and were focused on her. That did not occur.
And it says, I'm looking for the quietest group. The students respond this time by sitting down in their chairs. That's compliance, isn't it?
It may sound like that, but it wasn't.
Oh.
It wasn't.
Well, that's why I'm just trying to understand what the document says compared to what you're saying.
I want to read that part. Show me where.
It's it's about 1/4 of the way down. I'm looking for the quietest group. The students respond this time by sitting down in their chairs. And then you went on to talk about the problem with the student being then not treated very fairly whenever he encourages the group to be quiet. Well, but basically the steps were taken to get the class under control, and it may have wandered off again, but there was efforts again.
So it may have improved at this point, but it wasn't successful.
And then, I think it has here, the students improve, still less than ideal behavior when she is looking for groups. Well, again, that's saying that the students did improve. So she had redirection there in compliance.
Still not meeting my standards.
Compliance isn't your standard?
No, like I said, it still wasn't ideal. So they may have responded to what she said. It was an attempt, but it didn't get the result I would have been looking for.
Okay. Did you work with Ms. Souter at Skinner?
No.
Were you there? Were you ever present when she was a counselor at Skinner?
No, not that I recall.
Do you remember actually becoming involved in a PowerPoint on attendance with her?
No.
Well, I won't ask you any further about how you felt about that. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Mrs.
I don't have any further questions either.
Okay. All right. Well, at this time, I would allow board members to ask the witness questions. Mrs. Bay.
I need to have some clarification. I apologize for not understanding all of this. So you were brought in, it looks like in April, for an observation because Mrs. Bond asked you to come and observe.
Dr. Bond did ask me to come observe.
Because, and why was that?
The reason was to have a neutral party.
Okay,
Someone
so
else.
there had already been observations that had taken place by the principal at Gilder.
To my understanding, yes.
Okay. I would like to, and perhaps that's listed in the exhibits, and if so, at some point, if you could tell me where that is, that would be great. But I would like to, at some point, have someone address when the Gilder principal first observed, did an observation, when that was first, second, how many there were, and at what point Dr. Bond was brought in.
And I should have prefaced the witnesses. We have two principals that were presenting first so that they can get back to their buildings because one of them doesn't have power, and they were just single observations during the performance process, and we'll definitely have the other
Give me
witnesses.
sort of a timeline.
Yeah,
of
the
how
other
that-
witnesses will then lay out the whole.
Okay, thank you. I have just a question about, is it, in your experience as a counselor previously, is it usual for a counselor to recommend that a student be put on meds?
No.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Wayne.
I have no further questions.
No, Wayne.
Oh, Wayne.
So, just so I understand this, you arrived at 10:40, correct?
Yes.
And then you left approximately 11:25.
Yes.
What happened to scratch that. What happened to the students when you left at 11:25?
That was when their lesson was over and their classroom teacher picked them up.
So this was a sub, she was filling in for just one lesson? It's a special?
It's her class.
Okay.
So she wasn't subbing at all.
Did she have any other classes that day?
I don't know her schedule for the rest of the day.
After you left, did you go talk to the principal at Gilder?
No, I did not.
So it's your testimony today that, well, let me ask back up. going into this class, did you know the classroom's discipline history?
No,
Do you know if children are on IEP?
I do not.
Any behavioral issues?
I don't know.
You testify that you got into the car or you got back to your office and emailed Dr. Bond, correct?
I spoke to her on the phone
Talked
on
to
the
her
drive.
Did you speak to anybody else when you left that building?
I checked out with Abby Volchek.
And who's Abby Volchek?
She is the building SSL, I think is her title.
Did you relay any of the concerns you had to her?
I did have a conversation with her, and I did say that I was concerned and I'd be writing up my evaluation and sending it in right away.
So your testimony today, and I'm just trying to understand this, is that one more degree you would have called CPS, but you immediately didn't go to the principal and get her addressed?
The principal was not there that day.
So you didn't go to anybody in that building and say she shouldn't have any more classes that day?
I did not say that. I said that I was worried.
But not to the level that you might call CPS, but not to the level of where you will inform somebody in that building that she should not be teaching for the rest of that day?
Well, I think I would say that was my intention when I called Dr. Bond, was to have that conversation since the principal wasn't there.
No further questions.
Are there any questions from any other board members? Mr. Vargas.
Thank you, President Cotting. Is it typical when you're doing an observation to have a rubric with you that accompanies your observation notes?
Have the rubric with me while I'm...
Yeah, well, because we see the qualitative. I'm not sure if there's a, you talk about compliance. You typically see language regarding on a rubric where things stand related to classroom environments, related to student behavior. Was that something that you also took
I did not.
data on? Okay. Is that typical in your observations to only
I
do
don't.
qualitative?
Sorry.
Sorry. Is it typical for you when doing observations to only include qualitative and not include some level of quantitative information?
Sure. I like to make sure that everything that I put down is factual. Of course, there are going to be some qualitative things that came, and I did at the beginning of this lesson observation. I wanted to have as much data as possible. So as I started, but it got to the point I couldn't count. The kids were moving around so much, so I didn't have as much in this one as I would have maybe traditionally in other observations.
Is it typical for you to have you said you had a discussion with the teacher afterwards, Ms. Stroud?
It was a very brief.
Do you typically have a post-observation conversation with people that you observe?
In my own building, yes.
Did you have a post-observation?
No.
Is it typical for you to have a post-observation conversation before you have a conversation with the principal or a supervisor of somebody that you're observing?
No, I traditionally only observe the people that work at my school, so this is different. So I did ask if I should do that, but I was told I didn't need to.
Oh, you were told you didn't need to?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you had a conversation on the phone with Ms. Bond, is that correct?
I did.
Was that before or after you sent the email
Before.
follow-up? Before. Okay. Were there any other interactions with Ms. Souter after your, and how much time did, sorry, let me back up. How much time did you have this conversation with Ms. Souter after the informal unannounced observation?
1 minute. It was very brief.
Okay. No more further questions for me.
Mr. Snow.
Thank you. Do you know how many students were in the class?
I don't.
You know. Okay. Does anybody else know? Okay. Is there that
I
observation?
don't, but we can ask the principal.
Thank you.
Are there, Mr. Wayne?
Who told you not to have a post conversation?
I asked Dr. Bond as part of the process because usually there's another document I would use with this, so I asked if I needed to do that or follow up, and no.
So this isn't the complete observation document, so exhibit number 62?
Typically, I would do it there's another form that I would do additionally with it as part of the follow-up conversation.
So the exhibit 162, the 3 pages, that's your entire evaluation of this observation?
Yes.
And you said typically you do another follow-up, and that was not done because you were instructed not to?
Correct.
Is that part of our regular procedures to always do that, based off of your experience as a principal?
If I was observing a teacher in my own building, no, I would certainly have a conversation follow-up. And this is the only time I've ever done this as a principal, to go visit another school to observe, so I don't know what.
So let's talk about that for a second. So based off of your years of experience, this is very unusual to you be the neutral, or in your experience, for another principal to be a neutral party at a different school?
Speaking for myself, it's the only time I've been asked to do it.
And how long have you been in the district?
How long have I been in the district? I started in 2000.
And how long have you been a principal?
This is my second year, so I've completed 1 year.
1 year. Have you ever had since 2002, when you started? I'm sorry.
2000.
2000. Were you ever full-time in a building?
Yes.
And in that building, have you seen other principals come in and do observations?
Of myself?
No, have you personally seen other principals come in and do other observations?
Only as part of our coaching training, not as part of someone's plan like this. But that's just my experience.
So how were you instructed? How and when were you instructed to do this observation?
I would say, I don't know the exact date, but at least a few days, about a week before, I was asked by Dr. Bond to go and she said that she thought of me because I had been a school counselor, and she just thought I would be a good person to go in because maybe I would see things someone who hadn't been a counselor before might not see.
And was that verbal or a written communication?
That was a phone call.
Was there any follow-up written communication that you can recall?
I don't recall.
So how did you arrange what day and time to go?
I was told the date and the time. I know I didn't pick that.
And who were you told that by?
Dr. Bond.
Thank you.
Mr. Vargas.
Thank you, President Gotting. You were told the date and time, correct?
Yes.
But there was no communication to Ms. Souter.
I was told I'd be unannounced.
Okay. In your position in the last year as a principal, how often do you do observations?
It depends on the number of people that you have on appraisal that year. Last year we had about 15 teachers that were on appraisal.
And about how many of those teachers are you? So there's 15 on appraisal. Appraisal you're defining as an observation that looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
But a more complete observation, what does a complete observation include? You mentioned other aspects that you did not get to.
Sure. If it's an announced, we'll have a pre-observation conference, so there's a form that goes with that. And then there's this form, which is factual items, and then another sheet that you would use to talk through, this was effective because when you said this, it was a best practice, and this is the name of the best practice. Continue doing those things, etc.
Okay. So in all your appraisals, this is each of those components are part of a full appraisal process.
Yes.
Okay. But in what you were asked to do does not match a full appraisal process that you normally typically have done in your professionals.
Correct.
Okay. Were you asked to do a pre-observation?
No, because it's unannounced, so we couldn't.
Okay. And was there any other, I know you said you didn't speak with Ms. Souter beyond that 1 minute. Any direct feedback provided in email correspondence to Ms. Souter after your observation?
None.
Just one question, and I'm just trying to get a sense of definitions. You use the term compliance a lot in your observations. In your opinion, can you just re-clarify when you are characterizing the classroom behavior, what would be your opinion on how you're classifying the behavior in the classroom?
I would define that as 100% of the students were following the direction. So,
Okay.
for example, if I were to, we've already taught at our school that give me 5 is the call to attention. So if I were to say give me 5, I wait until they're all giving me 5. That would be 100% compliance.
Okay. I only ask because there's other instances where you're using different language other than compliance, and I'm trying to get a sense of what the difference is when we talk about compliance as opposed to, let's say, like a term like unruly, and what those are not the same. But that's very helpful. Thank you very much.
All right. Do board members have any other questions? Mrs. Fay.
We are going to hear from Dr. Bond.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so at this time, I would ask Ms. Gutierrez-Fox to, if she has any questions for the witness.
Sure, just a few follow-up. You were asked about your call immediately to Dr. Bond, and is it your understanding that Dr. Bond is the school counseling supervisor, so she is a supervisor to Ms. Souter?
Yes.
Okay. And did you call her immediately when you left the building?
I walked to my car, and I think I was thinking about it, and I may have driven a little bit, but then I did call her.
Calling her on the drive?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Was it your understanding that your observation was part of intervention process?
Yes.
Okay. Can you, since you are the first witness today, are you familiar with the informal and formal process used at OPS?
Yes.
Okay. Could you describe that, how that process, that plan of improvement works, just in your own understanding?
Sure. Well, with teachers and the counselor, you would, of course, it's a plan of support. And so if you are working with someone and they have an area that's a deficit or need to improve on, then you would work with that person. And first there's an informal portion of that, and different people are called in to support you through that so that you have all the opportunities for professional development to help with those areas, because again, it is a plan of support. If growth isn't shown during the informal plan, then a formal plan is put in place.
Okay. And can you describe the formal plan?
The formal plan is very detailed. It is communicated with the person who is on the plan of support week by week by week by week, exactly what supports they're going to have, what their expectations are. It's laid out right away so they know.
And typically, our observations by different professionals conducted as part of the process.
In my experience, it has not been one person that does all the evaluations if someone's on a plan.
And did you have any understanding that Mrs. Souter had asked for neutral parties to observe?
I did.
Okay, and how was that conveyed to you, that that's why you were chosen?
Well, when Dr. Bond called me and asked me to do this, it was, like I said, I've never been asked to do it before, so she did. I didn't ask why, but she did offer that information that I would be a neutral party who had been a counselor and an administrator.
Okay. I don't have anything further.
Mr. Wade, do you have any further questions for the witness?
Just a moment. I just have a quick follow-up regarding your reaction after observing the lesson. Why didn't you say more to Mrs. Souter about what you had observed and your concerns if you were that concerned for the class? And maybe I should ask this, I'll withdraw that. Do you think it was your responsibility or some duty to also be supportive of her and help her?
Right, and that is why I asked about the follow-up, because it did seem like I wanted to make sure somebody was going to share it with her and talk about it with her, even if it wasn't me.
But did you think, did you think you were prohibited from talking with her?
I did get the feeling that it was not encouraged, and I can't say that anybody told me that specifically, but I was just asked to go in and observe, and I knew I wasn't doing a follow-up conversation with her, so I just wanted to be the observer and share what I saw, but I was not asked to talk to her.
And I think your testimony is that the whole goal of these plans, intervention, formal intervention or informal intervention, is to help the teacher. But you, and as a part of that, you believed your role was not to actually be involved in helping the teacher, but giving information to someone else to help the teacher. Mm-hmm. Say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. And this is the first time you've ever done this? That was the first time you ever did the observation for someone? Yeah, in another school?
As a principal?
Yes.
Yes.
No further questions?
All right, I would ask counsel, both sides, do we need to continue to sequester this witness for anything later, or can she be released?
I think we should just, I'm sorry. Yeah, we can go ahead and keep it in place. And I think she's probably leaving, and we'll call her back if we need to.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do you have additional witnesses that you want to call forward?
We do, yes. We'll go get Principal Beller. So if we could have one moment.
Okay, and during that time, if the board needs just a minute as well, otherwise we'll need you all back before we start.
Okay, thank you.
I know. Not good timing.
If I may, Ms. Sutter, got a telephone call from her grandson, needed something desperately, so she was going to take a second. So my apologies, it won't be very long. She said she'd be right back.
Okay, let the record reflect that we have reconvened. And at this time, I don't know if it's Ms. Gutierrez Fox or am I calling on?
Oh, yes. Ms. McHugh, go ahead.
Yes, we're going to begin with the questioning of Nanette Beller.
Okay. So could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Nanette Beller.
And do you solemnly swear to tell the truth or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and begin.
Ms. Beller, what's your current position for OPS?
Okay, I'm the principal at Columbian Elementary.
And how long have you been in that position?
This is my 5th year there.
And how long have you worked for OPS?
32 years.
So can you tell us a little bit about the other positions you held at OPS?
Yeah, I was a classroom teacher for 23 years at Pawnee Elementary, and then I was the assistant principal at Highland for 2 years, principal at Sherman Elementary for 2 years, and now my 5th year at Columbian.
Can you tell us just briefly about your educational background?
Yeah, I have my bachelor's from University of Nebraska at Lincoln and my master's in educational administration from UNO.
Can you describe your duties and your responsibilities as a principal?
Yes, principals in OPS were instructional leaders. Of course, student achievement is a main goal of all of ours.
Have you ever, at any point during your tenure with OPS, been a part of an informal or formal intervention plan?
Yes, I have.
Can you explain to the board how that sort of plan works, just generally?
Okay, so we have an informal plan of intervention, and these are always to be helpful for teachers, helping them improve and get better. So we have an informal plan, and if that doesn't work, then we go to a more formalized plan.
So were you asked at some point to conduct an observation of Mrs. Souter as part of an intervention?
Yes.
Did you know Mrs. Souter at that time?
No.
Do you know why you personally were selected to observe?
Just as an independent party. I guess, what is the word? Not independent, just neutral party.
Did someone tell you they wanted a neutral party for the observation?
Yes.
Who told you that?
Missy Orlando. Oh, Missy Orlando.
Okay. Did she explain to you why she wanted a neutral party?
They just wanted a neutral observer to observe her.
Okay, can you please turn to Exhibit 158? Is this documentation from the observation you conducted with Mrs. Souter?
Yes.
Did you conduct any other observations for her?
No, this is the only one.
And what date did you conduct this observation?
It was March 18th, 2016.
So this was part of her formal intervention plan?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I see a lot of notes here on Exhibit 158. Did you take those notes while you were in the classroom?
Yes, I did. I brought in my laptop and took notes as the lesson went. Oh, on my laptop. Yep.
What did you say after that?
On my laptop.
So looking at these notes, do they accurately reflect what you observed on that day? So I want to talk a little bit about this observation. We'll start with student behavior. How many students were in the classroom on this day?
That was a concern. I tried to count the number of children. I believe there were 20, but I could not get an accurate count because so many were wandering the classroom and not sitting in the seats. There was no student name tags, and kids were wandering the classroom. So I couldn't get an accurate count. I think in here I said, I believe 20.
Do you know about how many of those 20 students were out of their chairs?
They all were out of their chairs at some time throughout the lesson.
Okay, can you turn to page 3 of this exhibit? Near the bottom of the page, that last block of wording, do you see the line that says the students were wandering?
Yes.
Can you read that sentence out loud?
20 to 60% of students were out of seat wandering most of the lesson. 20 students, I believe, were in the class. The students were wandering so much because of the lack of consistent routines and procedures from Mrs. Souter, I couldn't get an accurate count.
Okay, so you use the phrase there, consistent routines and procedures. Can you explain what kinds of routines and procedures you would expect in the classroom at this point in the year?
Right. By March, the routines and procedures should be clearly set. Students should know where they're seated, how they answer questions, how they work in groups, an all quiet signal to quiet the class down. Those by March should set firmly in all classrooms.
And were those procedures set firmly in this classroom?
No.
Can you describe some of the student behavior that you witnessed while you were in the classroom?
Yes, there were kids out of their seats, spinning in the adult chair behind Mrs. Souter, playing with games off the shelf, talking to each other, shouting out. At one point when they were lining up, they were kicking each other, sitting on each other, screaming out, all kinds of things.
Did you note any inappropriate language used by students?
I feel it's inappropriate. They were yelling out, "Suck it," and those kind of things.
And what was Mrs. Souter's reaction to this behavior?
She would at times correct them, but there'd be no compliance and no follow-through. She'd say stop or shh or, don't do that, but there was no compliance, no follow-through.
Did you feel that she was aware of what was happening in the classroom?
Not at all times.
So I want to talk a little bit about Mrs. Souter's attitude during that lesson. During the observation, can you describe her attitude toward the students?
I feel she wasn't prepared. The lesson began very late into the period. I guess, what do you mean by attitude?
So her tone of voice or how she treated students.
There was a lot of negative, remarks and commands. Stop that, not finding the positive, just stop that, but no follow through.
Okay, so talking about the content of the lesson, can you discuss your impression of the content of the lesson?
The lesson was not the lesson that was on the scope and sequence, so it wasn't the right lesson for the week that she should have been on. And the counseling lessons are all developed for them and written for them clearly with all kinds of way to introduce the lesson, model tiered guided independent instruction. There's cooperative learning activities, there's options for extension, there's options for reteaching, and she didn't follow the lessons or the options on the lesson plan.
How long did the lesson last?
It was 50 minutes.
I'm sorry, did you say 50?
It was a 50-minute guidance period.
Okay. And how many minutes of instruction took place?
I would estimate about 10 minutes of instruction took place.
So what was going on during the other 40 minutes of the lesson?
The lesson was on locks. This was a 6th grade lesson. It was a transition lesson going into middle school. So the kids were supposed to learn how to do the locks. And she handed out the locks, and then they just played with the locks, practicing opening the locks.
Was there any structure to the 40 minutes of the lesson?
No.
How did this classroom compare to other classrooms you've been in as a principal and as an instructor?
It was very, very poor instruction.
And do you have any other observations or impressions about the classroom that you feel the board should know about?
The students were not getting quality instruction that they deserve, and you know, I've actually never seen that poor of a lesson in my whole career as an administrator or as a teacher with a colleague.
Okay, we don't have any further questions at this time.
Okay, Mr. Wade?
Ms. Beller,
I'm not sure your mic is on. I'm sorry.
did you talk with Ms. Souter after this particular observation?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I gave the observation to Nancy Bond.
And I guess I'm wanting to follow up on some of the questions that have been asked earlier. You do the observation, you notice things, and is it your opinion that the people involved in the plan, intervention plan, should in fact be supportive and helpful to the teacher? The people that are involved in doing the intervention and the plan, should all people be helpful and work with the teacher?
Yes, that's what the plan's in place for.
Well, then why didn't you?
Because I gave it to the, I was just asked to do the observation and give it to Nancy Bond.
But I think you described it as kind of alarming, and I'm just trying to wonder why, and maybe you thought that was only your role, is to get the information and then deliver to somebody else. Is that what you're saying?
That was my role.
Were you told that was your only role and not to talk with Mrs. Souter?
Yeah, they said just complete the observation and get it to Nancy Bond.
And did they say not to talk to Mrs. Souter?
They did not say that.
Okay. Was there, in your opinion, you're a principal and you have expertise and knowledge and experience. Could you have helped her if you would have talked with her about what was going on and helped counsel her to what might be effective?
She had another class coming in, and then I had to get back to my own building.
I think the second page, you note that she had a student model the lock the first time. She did not model it herself. Is there something wrong with that arrangement?
Yes, when we're teaching lessons, we want explicit, direct instruction from the teacher first so that it's taught the correct way.
Do you teach students, or have you taught students how to use a lock?
Personally?
Well, yes. Have you? No, I mean, have you taught in your classroom? Have you taught students how to use a lock?
No.
Okay. No further questions.
Okay, do we have any follow-up questions from Ms. McHugh?
Just a few.
Thank you.
Ms. Beller, were you a part of the actual plan team for Mrs. Souter?
No, I wasn't part of the team.
Was it your understanding that the information from your observation would be shared with her by someone else?
Yes. Her team that was supporting her.
And do you know who was a part of that team?
I know Nancy Bond and Missy, and then her principal.
And I just want to turn back to Exhibit 158 for a moment. If you turn to page 4 of the exhibit.
Yep.
There is a sentence in that second block of writing that starts with, "The students were pounding on the shelf." Can you just read that sentence aloud so the board knows a little bit more about the student behavior?
The students were pounding on the shelf, wrestling, sitting on each other in a chair, screaming easy money, playing with the Cat in the Hat stuffed animal, playing with an hourglass timer, and kicking each other.
And if you can turn to the next page, please. In that last block of writing, you have an observation about the next class. Can you explain what was going on there?
Yes, as I left her classroom, the next class was entering, and she said, "It's second grade." I continued to walk back to the building from her cottage, and the class said, "We're Miss Coco's third grade class." Miss Souter then realized they were the third graders.
So is your observation that she didn't know which class it was?
Yes. She thought they were the second grade class, but actually
I'm
they
gonna
were.
object. I think this speculates as to what her state of mind was. I mean, what she said, maybe she made a mistake. So, I mean, I think it's beyond what she would have knowledge of.
Can you put that on the record? Your mic was not on.
I'm sorry, I'm objecting on the basis that I think it's speculative, and this particular witness would not have knowledge of the state of mind of the person. It might have been simply a mistake. So to project what they believe the person was thinking at the time and didn't know or did know is, I think it's inappropriate, and I object on that basis.
Ms. McNeilis, Bryce, do you have a recommendation for the board on that objection?
I would recommend that we sustain the objection.
Okay. So with this, oh, go ahead. Ms.
Or do you have to vote on that? Okay.
We do.
Okay.
So that's why I was
Yep.
a little confused, so.
I move that we sustain the objection based off of speculation and strike her testimony, question and answer from the record.
So there's a motion by Mr. Wayne to sustain that motion, or those comments. Is there a second?
Second.
So second by Mr. Vargas. Are there any questions that the board members have related to that? If not, roll call, please.
Snow.
Aye.
Vargas.
Aye.
Wayne.
Aye.
Fay.
Aye.
Godding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. And back to Mrs. McHugh.
Ms. Beller, based on what you observed on this date, would you have wanted Ms. Souter as the school counselor in your school?
No.
And why not?
You know, all the employees and all the staff members in my school, I would want my own children to have as their counselor, their teacher, their custodian, and I would not want my own classroom or my students at Columbian Elementary having her as their counselor, because in my opinion, there was about 10 minutes of instruction, and the rest of the time was wasted. And also, there was no classroom control. There was no routines and procedures, and the lesson wasn't followed. It was, wasted time of those students.
We have no further questions.
Mr. Wade, do you have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, I just have a quick follow-up question.
And can we hear? I just want to
Sorry,
make sure that. Okay,
I do
thank you.
apologize. Is this the only time you've ever observed Mrs. Souter?
Yes.
So you have nothing to compare it with as to whether or not this was typical or unusual. You're just saying that's what you saw on that day, but based on that, you wouldn't have any idea how she teaches in any other class and on any other day. Is that correct?
Well, I see my own counselor in my own building, and also by March.
Well, I know, but
by March, that's not the kind of lesson that we should see. The routines and procedures were not there. It wasn't the lesson that was to be taught, and the lesson plan was not followed.
But you'd have not observed her at any other time to see
No.
whether or not the lesson plan had been followed on another occasion in another classroom, have you?
No, but you.
That's all I'd ask. Thank you. Oh, no further questions.
Okay, at this time, do board members have any questions? Ms. Fay.
This is part of a This was part of a scheduled observation, so she did know you were coming?
This was unannounced.
This was another unannounced one. Okay. And do you know, maybe this is a question for Dr. Bond, but do you know that she knew at a part written in the plan there, or I guess, you know what, I'll save that for Dr. Bond. That's, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Snow.
Thank you. Just a quick couple of questions. So you said there's like a little bit over 20 kids in the classroom?
That
It
was
was
one
just
of the
hard 'cause there were-
problems. I think there was 20, but I couldn't get an accurate count because they were never in their seats and they were wandering so much.
And if I'm correct, I do recall she did mention to have the kids stand up to demonstrate that, how to lock or play with their locks.
At one point,
I believe it was like in the
I think she
stand
said
up,
stand up.
page 1, yeah. Yeah. Am I supposed to, page 1?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, she said, at one time, she said stand up.
Okay.
But some children were behind her. I mean, some children were sitting, but some were behind her in a chair, some were spinning, some were wandering the classroom. So some were already up, but then there were some in their seats. So she said, stand up.
This might sound like a fool's question, a weird question, but is there any type of lesson plan to teach a kid how to open up a lock? Or
Yeah,
the
there is.
actual-
This lesson was clearly written out for her.
And instruction was supposed to go full 50 minutes?
Yeah, and there was
Was there any,
like
like-
extension, and then there was options. Like, let's say a small group of children were having a problem. There were activities for them to do for reteaching that she could have done, and then like group activities for the kids that did know what to do, what they could have done.
Okay. And this wasn't, this was a group activity? Is that what you're saying?
It was whole group, but then there was options provided for small group, independent, and like cooperative group activities.
So she
too.
could have had, like,
But this was just it was just a whole group activity. She didn't do any of the other activities, and then and I guess it was whole group, and then all just independent, and instead of like formally grouping the children
Was
and
there-
differentiating.
And my last question, was there any kids hitting each other with locks, or was the room dangerous?
They were kicking each other, sitting on each other. I don't
I'm
believe
talking
they
about
were
with
hitting
with the locks.
hitting
I
with
mean,
the locks.
or anything dangerous that might seem like
Well,
you'd have
kicking
to
each other and
stop
sitting on
or-
each other. It was,
So nothing that you had to really intervene to stop
No.
another kid from getting hurt? No.
that wasn't really my, my purpose. I was, watching the classroom management and seeing how that was going.
Understand. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Vargas.
Thank you, President Gotting. The question you asked before was, how does this compare to other classrooms you've been in your professional career? Can you answer that question again? How does this compare to other classrooms that you've seen in your professional career in terms of classroom management?
Very, very poor.
But
Unsatisfactory.
Is this in the bottom 5? Would
Bottom
this be
5%.
This is in the bottom 5%.
This is
So you've
the-
never seen a classroom that has had worse classroom management by a teacher in your professional career?
No. I mean, it's in the bottom 5%. Unsatisfactory.
But this is the worst example of classroom management you've seen in your professional career?
Yes.
It is, okay. So 23 years as a classroom teacher. How many
Yeah.
years have you been in a supervisory role as a principal or instructional?
9.
9. So typically in a year, over the 9 years, how many times have you been involved in a process having to do with an improvement plan informally? or
I have
formally?
been involved 2 times, I believe, if I recall correctly.
2 times, okay. In your experience in improvement plans, is it typical for observers like yourself to be asked to be part of it, be part of the process, but have no stake or role in providing supportive professional development to the person on the plan?
Well, if the staff member wants a neutral party to have, come in and do an observation, that
You mean if the person being observed wants it, or if the supervisor? Who do you mean?
I think either.
Okay. In the times that you've had, in these 2 times, has it been typical for these unannounced observations to be for the people doing the unannounced observations to have conversations in terms of feedback with the people on the plan?
This is my first time I've done a neutral party observation.
Oh, okay. Okay. In the times that you've had done improvement plans, what has been the process that you have engaged with to?
And then after the observation, you would have a post-conference.
Okay. And the post-conference would be for how many, approximately how long?
Maybe 20, 30 minutes.
And in your opinion, what's the purpose of the post-conference?
Would be to highlight the things that went really well, and then to pick out some areas that need improvement.
Mm-hmm. And why do you, in your opinion, why do you believe that that's a component of an observation cycle?
To help the staff member improve.
Okay. Do you believe, given your role in this, that you had the ability to support the staff member in improving?
No, I wasn't asked to do that.
Okay. That's my questions for right now. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions? Mr. Wayne?
Because a lot of this is based off of your experience. How many teachers currently have interventions in your building?
0.
And on average, how many students do you suspend or expel in your building?
Maybe 1%.
Is that in line with the district's average or
We're
higher?
below the district average.
And how do you in your building manage resources, as in where paraprofessionals go and extra support goes in your building?
I have very little para support in my building, so I basically just have, the kindergarten paras, the district allotted paras, so kindergarten, ESL, and special ed.
And as it relates to this building, do you know how that dispersed is, or how
No,
that is?
I don't.
So you don't know if this class typically has support in it?
No.
You don't know the history of the students?
No.
Discipline records?
No.
Student behavior records?
No.
IEPs?
No.
This is just a snapshot of...
It was a 6th grade classroom.
And what time does school start?
8:50?
So this was the first class.
Yes.
Were students late?
I'm sorry, I don't recall if any students were late that day.
So you're taking detailed notes about the performance of the educator in the room, but that's not impacted if students are late or not?
I was there to watch instruction, and, it was supposed to start at 8:50. I don't believe any students were late that day, but...
But it could be...
I don't remember. I don't think any were, but I'm not sure about that.
But it could be that it started late because students were late from maybe a grab-and-go breakfast or late from a bus or things like that?
If there were any, I don't recall there was, but there was no big influx of late students.
It's fair to say when you fill out reports, you always fill them out completely, correct? And you always fill them out thoroughly.
Can you answer
Yeah,
with-
you're not.
Yes,
Verbally.
sorry.
So
Thanks.
completely,
Yes,
thoroughly,
yes,
and accurately. And I'm sure
Yes.
you always fill them out truthfully, correct?
yes.
So you would have noted if students would have been late, correct?
But I don't know if that wouldn't be a reflection on the teacher, like them coming in late really wouldn't be a reflection on her. You know, she would have no control if a student came in late.
But if it was multiple students, it would definitely maybe be the reason why the lesson started late.
I know there wasn't multiple. I don't think there were any late that day, but I'm not positive.
But that's not in your report, correct? Whether all students were there on time.
No, it is not in my report.
Did you ever sign this report?
I sent it electronically.
Is there an electronic signature that you complete when you typically do these?
I don't typically send these, so
So and again, I know you said you think there was about 20 kids. Because of the, and let me just preface this with that. When you're taking this, in no way are you thinking 6-7 months from now you might be sitting here in front of a board being asked detailed questions. So I understand that. So
and I do want to say that as an observer, we're always in there to find the good. We're there to find and give the teacher, this is the good that they're doing, and descriptive feedback. You know, our children need descriptive feedback to know what they're doing right and how to get better, and that's my purpose when I'm in doing observations.
But you were instructed in this case not to give feedback.
Right, but that's what through the lesson, that's what I'm doing, that's why I set it up, so like at our district initiatives, like, modeled, shared, guided, so I can pick out the great things they're doing.
Well, and the reason why I'm asking these questions is that you're very detailed, that the report starts at, discussion started at 9:30. You're very detailed even with quotes regarding what was said and how it was said.
That's why I don't think there was any students that came in late. But
that lends to my point.
I'm under oath. I'm not quite positive
Right.
if 100% were there on time.
And I'm just saying you were detailed about everything, but not the number of kids.
I tried to be detailed.
So I find that interesting because if there's 20 kids, no matter how much they're moving in a room, we can still count to 20.
I think that is a good illustration of the chaos that was going on in the classroom. I have never been in a classroom where I couldn't count the students, ever.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about your conversation with Dr. Bond. How did that conversation go when she called you and said she wants you to observe?
It wasn't Dr. Bond.
Who
It
called
was
you?
Missy Orlando asked me
And
if
who-
I
and
would
who is
do
that?
Missy Johnson Orlando, HR, elementary HR
So
supervisor.
explain that conversation.
She asked if I would be a neutral party to observe a counselor that was on a formal plan of intervention
So
as a neutral party, so there'd be no biases.
So,
That's how she didn't say so there'd be no biases. That's what I took.
but you knew that she was on a formal plan.
Yes.
And you know what formal plan means based
Yes.
off of your history. So that there was already an informal process and that person wasn't successful, correct? And so they moved to the formal plan.
Right.
So that was already relayed to you before you went in there, correct?
Yes.
So you already knew that there were some issues or perceived issues with this individual. So then you weren't truly neutral, were you?
I tried to be neutral.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Let me clarify. I'm not in any way putting this on you. I think it's this. Everybody was in the process.
I
and-
really
and I'm
took
just-
it as, I really honestly was like, I'm going to be neutral. And That's why I went in and did an observation like I do any of my own staff members.
But now thinking back, since you are a principal and we've quasi-qualified you as an expert by asking you some questions, I can ask you this hypothetical. Would you, if a teacher was a neutral or was in a formal process based off of your expertise in a formal process and wanted a neutral party, would you want that neutral party coming in to evaluate your teachers, knowing that they're in a formal process, or would you truly want it to be neutral? Just say, go in and evaluate
I
this
honestly thought it was a good idea.
person. To tell the person ahead of time that's evaluating them that they're in a formal process? Or would you prefer that they actually go in and just evaluate that individual without knowing the person's on a formal or informal process? If it was you, back in your days of teaching, and you were involved in a formal process, and you requested a neutral party, would you hope that that person came in neutral? And I mean not knowing whether you're in a brand new teacher or a 35-year teacher, just somebody asked to go in and watch you and observe you? Or would you, in that situation, want that evaluator to know that you've already not successfully completed an informal process?
I really was neutral. I felt I was neutral.
It's not an attack on you at all, ma'am.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with you. I think you did a wonderful job. I think you took very complete notes. My question is, if you were that teacher, since we've qualified you as an expert and you've based your opinion off of all your years of experience, if you were in that situation, would you want your neutral evaluator to know that you were in a formal process, or would you want that evaluator to simply come in and observe you without knowing any of that?
I guess I feel like you want me to say I would want that.
No, you're fine. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm an attorney, so I kind of
Okay.
I can't get out that mode. I try to. So I do appreciate you taking time to answer that, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It's just interesting questions that I have. Thank you. I have no further questions.
I have a question for you. Do you believe, knowing that you were observing under a formal process that was occurring, that it tainted your view of how you would document your
No.
information to us? So you don't believe that it tainted your view? You continued to do the process the same way you would have done it?
Yeah, I typed
whether
it
you
up
knew
and
or
I
didn't know?
observed it like any other, like a teacher in my own building.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Mr. Vargas?
This is not to. I would like an answer because I'm curious, because we are basing this off of many years of experience and the work that we've done, that if you were in the same scenario, would you have preferred to have somebody observe you knowing that you were on an informal, had not met an informal plan and now on a formal plan, or whether or not, is there a point of order? Oh, you just put your hand up. Or would you have preferred that that person not know that information?
So I guess, do you want me to say I prefer that, I guess?
No, I
Yeah.
honestly would want to know, because I think we all have, we're asking you these questions, and given the opinions that you're providing on behalf of us, I would like to know that.
Can I?
Yeah, I've got to go to America for next.
Well,
'cause
I
she
just,
was the next
for
one.
Mr. Vargas and Mr. Wayne's question, I feel like they're at, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like you're asking this question because we're trying to evaluate whether or not the process that we use for the formal intervention is a good process or not. And so I think they're asking you to evaluate the process, and this is, well, Mr. Wayne says no, but Mr. Vargas says yes. So I guess I would like an answer to the question, just because maybe to know whether or not it's a good process during a formal evaluation for the observer to know that the observee has already undergone an informal, but
I guess, if I was asked to do a neutral observation on somebody out of my building, I probably would have, if they wouldn't say, I'd say, oh, you'd probably say why, probably too, and then Don't you agree?
This is still
Okay.
to you. To you, if you were a teacher in this same scenario, would you have wanted the observer to have knowledge of whether or not you had not?
I do have a point of order.
Okay, go ahead.
The witness in this case has answered the question to the best of her ability.
Okay.
I think from that, we, as a board, will have a conversation.
That's fair.
I would
I
agree, and
appreciate
I
that.
think we're putting undue pressure on you to answer practices, which isn't why we're here. And so I think we need to move on. Ms.
Can I
America?
finish? I
Oh,
did
I'm
have
sorry,
a question.
I didn't know you were.
In the communication that was given to you, was that via phone, email, or both? Before leading up to the planning of this?
When they asked me to do the observation, it was face-to-face.
Oh, okay. But there's no email correspondence or any other information?
I emailed this to Nancy Bond,
Okay.
the document to Nancy Bond.
Was there any conversation face-to-face regarding format or procedure for the type of information you are collecting?
Can you ask that again?
Was there any information in terms of the process, specifically what you're being asked to do?
No,
or
just,
was it?
It was just do an unannounced observation.
Okay, but no set of, but I'm not, we would like some notes on, your recommendations, your thoughts, pros and cons.
Just go in and do, an
Okay.
observation just like we do any
Okay.
day with any of our staff members.
Okay. And I think I asked this question, sorry, I didn't ask this question. Does this document reflect what you normally would include in an observation?
Yes.
To people that you
I
would
did it
send?
just like I would do for one of my staff members.
Okay, thank you very much. I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Ms. America?
First, if I can say this, I think our reporter is getting a little frustrated because we're not speaking into the mic clearly, and we're not finishing our questions and then allowing the witness to answer. And I know, like, having taken copious notes in boardrooms before, it gets a little bit frustrating. So if we can just all be aware of that, all of us together. I think you actually answered most of my questions. So I was going to say, based on your experience, because we asked you several questions about that, if Dr. Bond or Mr. Orlando or someone had called and asked you to do an informal observation and didn't tell you why, would you have asked why, or would you,
Yes.
knowing that's out of the normal, made connections based on your experience within the district?
Yes.
At this time, I'll turn it back to Ms. McHugh to follow up on any questions that you may have after our questions.
We have no further questions.
Mr. Wade?
No further questions.
Okay, for the record, would you like to continue to sequester the witness until we're completely done?
We'll release her to return to her building.
Okay. Any objections to that?
No, I have no objections.
Okay. With that, we will ask you to call your next witness. And maybe when you call your witness, if you could just share what their title is and what their role is, that might help
Okay, we're going to
everyone
have
at the table.
Cassandra Schmidt next, the principal at Gilder, so we just need to get her out of the conference room.
Okay.
Administration, so.
Point of order. Wait.
Yeah. It'd be appropriate. Sure. That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, correspondence. Sure does. Yeah, that makes sense. I was afraid
All right.
there's no reason for her to be involved. Anyway, for Judy, so that's a good point. Yeah. Perfect. Totally okay, perfect. It's even on. Thank you. Bye. How you doing, Trish? Good.
Hello.
Is this in order, like when mine started?
There's just numerical, so I'll refer you.
Oh.
I'll say.
Sure.
I was going to do that.
Thank you.
That's exactly how it was. I could have done it for you. Like, whoa.
That was a nice little ad. Yeah, that was nice. I like that. I like the little ad.
Okay, I would like to instruct the court reporter that we are back on the record. Okay, with that, I will look back to, oh goodness, Ms. Gutau Fox, and turn the questioning over to you.
Okay. Thank you.
And I believe your mic is not on.
Did you want to swear in?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. So do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And can you please state your name for the record?
Cassandra Salvo Schmidt.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you tell us what your current position is at OPS?
I'm currently a principal of Gilder Elementary.
And how long have you held that position?
This will be my 9th year.
And how many years total have you been with OPS?
15.
Can you tell us what other positions you've held?
Absolutely. I was a 4th grade teacher at Liberty Elementary for 4 years. I was an instructional facilitator for 1 year at Liberty Elementary. And then after that, I was an assistant principal at Ashland Park Robbins for a year. And then I moved on to being a principal at Gilder Elementary.
And can you briefly tell us your educational background as well?
Sure. I have my master's degree as an administrative, in educational administration.
And can you also describe just maybe generally the makeup or demographics of your school?
Sure. We are 89% free and reduced population, 35% ESL population. We have a 23% mobility rate. So that's kind of our makeup.
And do you know Mrs. Souter?
Yes.
And how long have you known her?
She worked at, or she works, was a school counselor at Gilder Elementary for 5 years.
Okay. And what can you just describe generally what your, in your experience, many years with OPS, what your expectations and understanding is of the school counselor position?
Absolutely. The school counselor is a pivotal role in the elementary building. They are a touchstone for students to be a kind of a safe haven. So they not only provide guidance lessons, but they also provide a place for them to be a safe haven for them to be able to come to if they need time for them to, be able to share concerns. They're a place for parents to come as a resource. They provide resources for students. They provide resources for parents. They provide small group instruction small group guidance lessons and small group instruction, as well as they're just another touchstone and another educator in the building.
Okay. And was there a point in time when you had concerns about Mrs. Souter's performance?
The third year of Miss Souter being at Gilder is where I really started to feel that I needed to start to echo in to try and really bring in Dr. Bond and try and see what kind of resources could I provide or what kind of things could I maybe, is this appropriate or what could I do? This was new to me, this kind of, some of the things that were happening, they were different than things that I had had before as an administrator with that role, things that were happening in the building.
Okay, and we'll get to the informal intervention and formal intervention. Mm-hmm. What were some of the things, supports that you tried to provide before that, before the 2015-16 school year?
Sure. So some of the supports would be just providing. It was really more just conversations. So if something happened, it would just be that conversation of this is what happened, this is maybe what a parent had said, or this is what a student said. At Gilder, we just this is not what we hope to find. This is not what we hope to happen. This is what we don't do, what we don't want to happen for children. We hope to not have this happen in the future. And so I would hope that as a school counselor, you could echo that and we could have it move forward in a different fashion.
Okay. And how often, just generally, do you think you had these conversations with Mrs. Souter before the interventions?
I honestly don't know.
Okay. What's your regular interaction with a school counselor during the week?
A regular interaction with the school counselor, I think, should be very organic and quite often, mm-hmm. and it just wasn't.
Okay, and why so?
It just wasn't as natural as I had hoped that it could have been.
Okay, can you describe some examples of where that was an issue for you?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So, just an example would be. If you were walking down the hall and I would see Miss Souter, I would say hi. It was almost it was almost an afterthought for Mrs. Souter to say hi back, to say back, or just, hi, or, good morning or anything like that. She would say it, but it didn't ever seem very natural and fluid for that connection. And I don't know, I just felt like it should have been more fluid and organic.
Okay. And did you have to talk to her about even greeting children and
Yes.
that type of thing?
Yes,
Can you
saying
tell
hello. So that was something that I felt was really important. I had to, instead of her being in the building or coming in the building, that was a natural thing. So at Gilder, it's just very natural. We're about kids. We work for kids. That's our motto at Gilder. We work for kids. And so we're just very about kids, being in the building about kids. So in the morning, we're very, present. We are engaging students and being very present. And so we talk about being out in the hallways and greeting students. And so I had to explain, like, I need you to be present and I need to see you. And so I had to, just assign her to a spot. And but then I still would walk by and I wouldn't really see her greeting the students. And so then it was, you need to talk to the students. You need to say hi to the students. And so then it was say hi to the students. Verbatim writing down that I'm saying say hi to the students. And so then I said, well, and other things. It's okay to say other things. So this was in one of our meetings with Dr. Bond and stuff. And so I just felt like it just needed to be natural. Like, I feel like as an educator, when you're around kids and this is our job and this is our livelihood, it should be very natural to be around kids and to feel comfortable when kids are around us, and when kids are around you, you should feel you should just feel natural when a student comes up to you like, hi, how are you? How was your morning? And good to see you. And and hi, Betsy, how was your night? And to say their name and to say hello. And so to feel like we had to coach her on that. And I don't mind coaching people, but I just I never felt like that transferred. So.
Were there issues with her not knowing the children's names?
Yeah, yes. And that's okay. I know, 423 names is a lot to know, but it just never really was happening. And after 5 years, there was just not a lot of recollection for any names. And I feel like building relationships is so critical. But as the school counselor, I feel like that's even more critical because kids need to know that you know them. I think that's such a pivotal role. And I just believe that to be their touchstone, they just need to know that you know who they are.
So I want to talk about some events that happened leading up to the informal intervention.
Sure.
So if you want to turn to Exhibit 107 in your book. Do you know what Exhibit 107 is? And take your time.
Yeah.
Okay, what's this reflecting?
So this incident is just about a situation where, do you want me to go into detail? Or?
Don't use any student names or
okay.
names. Mm-hmm.
I guess if it was just was it, did you receive parental concerns regarding Mrs. Suter, is
Yes.
my question?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And is this an example of one of them?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Can you describe some other examples of parental concerns that were conveyed to you, or children have to be pulled out of our class or anything like that?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe that?
Yes. Do you want me to? They're in here,
Or just describe to the board,
Yes.
just generally.
Sure. There were many. So that was something that was alarming with me because I hadn't had that before, where I would get parent phone calls and parents would want their child not to receive or to not to have contact with the school counselor. And so as the principal, you're trying to support your staff. And so that's one of my roles, is to try and decipher between the parent and the student and the role, because you want to support your staff. And so you're trying to be a sounding board for the parent, and you're trying to decide, what happened, and you're trying to just, support your staff. And so I would listen to the complaint, and I would try to understand where it was coming from, and then I would try to have an understanding. And so, these would come in, like a complaint would come in where a parent would say that she would go up to their child and say, did you take a shower today? Did you have food? Did you eat dinner last night? Did your mom make you dinner? Did you take a bath? And I think as the school counselor, she was trying to find out if they had a need. But that's not how we do it at Gilder. That's not how we do it in OPS. That's not what we're trying to do. And the child felt attacked, and they went home and they cried. And that's what happened. And therefore the parent felt hurt, and the child didn't want to go to school again. And these are the things that we can't have happen to our children. You can't ask a child, did you take a shower? Did your mom bathe you? Do you have running water? Did you eat? This isn't what you say. You can do it in such a beautiful way of saying, I had tacos for dinner last night, and they were such great tacos. What'd you guys have for dinner? That's how you can find out if they had food last night. As a counselor, as an educator, you have touching points every single day with kids. You see kids on a daily basis. So you make a point to see them every day. You make a point to see, did they wear those jeans yesterday? And if they're wearing the same clothes every day, that's perfectly fine. However, are those clothes dirty? And if they're dirty every day, then you find out. You, as the counselor, you meet with the staff as the administration, and you say, oh, you know what, I'm noticing Joe's wearing those jeans every day, but I'm noticing those jeans are getting dirtier and dirtier. I don't think they have running water. I'm wondering if they're having clean things. And then we get together as a staff and we say, who has good moments with these parents? Who should make the phone call? Or should we do a home visit? But when we work in isolation as the school counselor, that doesn't go over well. If we have those conversations and we say things to kids that aren't kind, and kids go home crying and they don't want to return to school because the counselor hurt their feelings, that doesn't work. And that's not what we do.
Was that lack of a team approach common?
Yes, lack of team approach. And it happens so often. It happens so often that I would get phone calls, and I would have kids upset, and I would have kids that couldn't attend small groups, and that's so pivotal. Kids need to have their school counselor. Kids need to have someone that when they're in crisis, they need to be able to go to their counselor. And I need that staff member.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about some specific examples and issues. If you want to turn to Exhibit 104. And do you know what Exhibit 104 is?
Yes.
And what is that?
This was an employee consultation that needed to be done.
Can you describe for the board what's an employee consultation conference? How's that work?
An employee consultation was introduced, I believe, a couple years ago in the district to kind of be that next piece. So there's the appraisal process, and then there's the employee consultation form that is just another step that isn't part of the employee appraisal process, but it's something where a behavior is happening, and we need to address it now, and we need to kind of address it, and this is how we do it. So this is some things that were happening, and they kind of happened, and we just had to address it.
And who, when you say we, who was that?
So it was, it's me, and then if there's another supervisor, which because it was the assistant, I had an assistant at this time, and then because she's a counselor, so then she has a supervisor. So we all addressed it at the time together with her. We sat in there, and then the staff member, if they want to have another person in with them, they can. So she chose to have, it looks here, her OEA rep.
Okay. And the specific concerns, one of them is Mrs. Souter made the decision to suspend a student, telling a guardian that they should not attend school the following day. Can you tell me about that situation and why that was an issue?
That was an issue because none of the administration knew she had suspended a student. It wasn't until the attendance secretary went to make the phone call the next day that they called, and the parent said, well, they're suspended. And then the attendance secretary came into my office and said, did you know that so-and-so is suspended? And I said, I didn't suspend them. And so then I called my assistant, and they said, I didn't suspend them. And I said, well, who suspended the student? And so neither one of us had suspended the student, and we were very surprised. And so then we just did a little digging around, and we found out that the counselor had suspended the student. And that's not practice. The counselor can't suspend a student.
Okay.
Suspend a student.
And then another one, the next one is contacted a guardian to pick up their child mid-morning without approval of administration.
Correct.
What's that about, and why is that a problem?
Again, that's not practice. They can't. The child needs to stay in the building, and again, only an administrator can send home a student during the day.
And then the next one is on 5/4/15, took the initiative to divide a teacher's classroom when the teacher requested to leave the building without knowledge of administration. Can you tell me why that's a problem, what that was about?
Sure. So if a teacher is going to leave the classroom, they need to notify an administrator. And so if she's okaying that teacher to leave and kind of making a side situation and okaying that, number one, those parents, to me, that's safety. Allowing, I don't know exactly what happened, splitting those students up, then you're putting more students in classrooms when that didn't need to happen. I don't know that teacher's leaving. Are we sure did that get documented that teacher left early? I'm not sure why that teacher left early. That's a safety issue. Did we document that all those kids were in other classrooms? So there's lots of safety issues there for children. And then, again, that's an administrative role.
Okay. And then the next one was April 16th, 2015, intervened with a student who's expressing suicidal ideations without letting the administration or parents know. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes. This was a situation where the student had written some suicidal ideations down, and Ms. Souter had seen the note, or she'd expressed it, and this was, again, a while back, but had expressed it, and then Ms. Souter, I believe, either thought it wasn't as threatening as it was, or I don't want to put, but didn't think it was a situation as threatening as it was, but that is not ethical, that is not school counseling protocol, and it's just not what we do. And so it turned out to be a very large situation in the end, and it's just not appropriate for our kids' safety.
If you want to turn to Exhibit 106, can you tell me what Exhibit 106 is?
Yes. So this, so we did an employee consultation, and then she wrote a rebuttal to the employee consultation because she had feelings about the employee consultation, and so then this was my response to that.
Okay. And it looks like that discusses
it
in more detail.
It, yes.
Okay. And on number 5 on page 2 of that exhibit, you talk about the note.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And the mother was angry, sad, and outraged that the school counselor wouldn't call her right away regarding a note about her daughter expressing suicidal ideation. Is that accurate?
It is accurate. I did talk to the mom, and yes, I typed up exactly that.
Okay.
Yes.
And then if you want to turn to the next page.
Yes.
And it indicates there's some new business of items that had occurred possibly. Are these things that occurred after the
Yes.
consultation?
Yes.
Can you go through those and just briefly describe what the issues were with each of those?
Sure. The first one talks about going up to a student. This is a student that did not want to come to school because being probed about taking a shower, a bath, eating meals and those sorts of things. The second one is a 6th grade student that did not attend the final 2 weeks, missed 6th grade graduation because of the way that they were treated, and they were a note that had confidential information that she had presented to other students, and so they missed out on the last 2 weeks of 6th grade at Gilder. And the last one was about participating in writing an affidavit for a parent, and it ended up that students were removed in a home environment and placed in another home environment, and the result of that were the students ended up leaving Gilder Elementary altogether because of her role in that, and because she was at our building. And now that Ms. Souter is no longer at our building, that family has now come back to our building. But the stance of the district is that we are a neutral party, and that unless subpoenaed, we do not play roles in those court cases and those matters. So
And then,
they're just all about safety, really, and being a part of those matters.
Then if you want to turn to Exhibit 128.
Sure.
And it looks like that's an email that you sent to Dr. Bond as well, and this
Okay.
was all before the informal
Sure.
intervention, but after the May
Sure.
consultation. Can you tell me you mentioned Operation School Bell and the frustration you were having. Can you tell me about that situation? What was the issue with Operation
Sure.
School Bell?
Sure. Okay. I'm just going to take a
That's
minute to
fine.
look
Mhm.
through this. Oh, yes. Okay. Okay. This was a situation with a family that really just wanted to be a part of Operation School Bell, and had gone to the school counselor and asked to be on Operation School Bell, and they were denied it. And then they came to me and asked that they could be on it, and I didn't understand why they were being denied the opportunity to be on Operation School Bell. And so then she had stated that she would get them on Operation School Bell, and then when the list got sent in, they were not on Operation School Bell, and so this family lost the opportunity to be on that, and so it was very unfortunate that they missed that opportunity. However, at Gilder, one thing that I do like is that we have opportunities to provide many families beyond just the list of Operation School Bell. With grants and things, we can provide them other opportunities. And so that was always my thing, like, please provide me other families, that didn't make it on Operation School Bell. Please provide me those names. And that was never really ever given to me.
And was that
Given to me, like the kids that weren't listed, like, let's come up with another collaborative list. And so that I would like that list.
And so
then I would, but that's fine. I would gather those with other teachers, and we would create that list. And that's all right.
Was that generally a role of the school counselor in your experience, that they are to help provide resources to families in need?
Yes, they would help provide the resources in collaboration with me, and we could do that together. That would be great.
Okay. And let's turn then to Exhibit 142.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. What is Exhibit 142?
This is an employee consultation form about a SAT that was held.
And what's a SAT?
A SAT is a student assistance team. It's a meeting that is held with parents and the student assistance team, which is it's a group of usually it's maybe a resource teacher, perhaps it could have a couple of teachers. It could have the school counselor on it. It doesn't have to. It could have an administrator on it. But it's a group of educators that get together to problem solve, create strategies, resources for a student that either is going through some academic needs and or behavior concerns.
Okay.
And they come up with opportunities for the student.
Was Mrs. Souter on the SAT team at this time?
She was.
Okay, and so what's that mean?
That just means that she would go to the SAT meetings and the SAT, and she would provide input for parents and help provide resources.
Okay, and
as the counselor.
Can you tell me what happened and what you discussed in this consultation conference? What was the issue?
So what happened at this one, it was held during a parent-teacher conference, so a lot of times we try to partner those so parents don't have to come up extra. So we will do the parent-teacher conference and then extend it an extra 15 to 30 minutes, and so that's the time this was held. And so this particular kiddo, as you can see here, the concerns here looked like they were broaching the idea that he had some extra energy, perhaps, and maybe there was some extra movement, and they were trying to come up with some resources wrapped around that. And it talks here that the members stated that mom was very open to the conversation. Her comfort level was good considering the sensitive subject, because the year before she struggled with the subject. He was a first grader now, and she was starting to get her mind wrapped around it. And then it shows that at the end of the meeting, it was coming to a close, and at the very end, Ms. Souter asks her, was he ever deprived of oxygen at birth or have any trauma? And the mother immediately said, what? And then Ms. Souter started to say, well, sometimes kids with, and then at that point, the mother stood up and she said, so does every child with ADHD have a lack of oxygen or brain trauma when they are born? And at that point, the other staff members in there immediately tried to calm it down and diffuse the situation. And the mother immediately said, stop, leave the room to Miss Souter and get her out of here. Like, she did not want her in that room anymore, because that is not an appropriate statement. We wouldn't say that to a parent. We would never ask anybody that question. And so after that, after Ms. Souter left, the staff members worked very hard to repair her comfort level, worked very hard to calm down that situation, and she asked that she not have any contact with her child, and that they speak to me immediately about the situation, and she left the building. And the teacher stated mom's relationship with the school was drastically changed since that meeting. So,
and it also indicates she was sobbing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as a result of this and other interactions, what did you have to change the role of Mrs. Souter in regard to SATs?
Yeah, we did. We had to remove her from the SAT team because this type of comment was not foreign to things that she would say on SAT teams.
Okay. Then if you want to turn to Exhibit 126.
Sure.
And if you want to take a moment to look at that, and my question is just what this is, what this document is.
Sure.
Okay, what's Exhibit 126?
These are just more incidents of what had been happening in our building.
Okay. Can you briefly describe those?
Sure. The first one is about a family opting out because they had incidents the previous year, and they'd called and they'd found out that she was continuing to be there. That's a hard role because when there is an issue with an educator in a building, they'll say, "What are you doing about it as a principal?" And I just say I'm doing everything I can to keep highly educated, qualified teachers in our building, and then they say, "Okay, we're not coming," and thank you, and they're wonderful schools in OPS, and that's the end of that. The second one is an incident about a family that is at Gilder, and the mom, worked it out with us in the office. She was running late, as we all do, lots of situations. And we work for kids, we work for families. We make everything work for kids and families. So we had made it work out, and we told her it's okay. The mom was running late, and we'll watch those kids, and not a problem. They weren't going to make it to the bus. And so as they were waiting, the mom said that she had a situation there, and she ended up talking with Ms. Souter, and she felt like the situation felt talked down to, and then that was the situation where she got refused to sign up for the Operation School Bell, and then she found out at another school that you couldn't refuse that from anyone. And
did that indicate also, Mrs. Souter told this mother when she came that the school isn't going to watch your kids?
Yes.
She needs to be on
Yes.
time.
Yes. And that's something that I find to be so heartbreaking, because that's what we do. We work for families and we work for kids. And we'd already talked to the mom in the office, and I just feel like we're there for kids. That's what we do. And it was like 4:20. We're still on duty. It wasn't, I just had such a hard time with that. And we do, I don't know, it was just such a moment of, why are we there then if we're not there to watch kids? That's what we're doing. So it was hard for me. And then, this whole thing where, the family didn't get put on it, thought they had. So this was another thing about Operation School Bell, and being denied, people not getting put on that list. The final, another one here was pulling a student that's doing well out of a classroom, out of instruction time, when a family hadn't asked for it, and the student's doing well, and there's really no need to be pulling the child out of instruction. The teacher didn't arrange it, the parent didn't arrange it, the child sees a therapist outside of school. There's really no reason to be doing that. So we really, that's not really her role to be doing private sessions with a student. That's not good judgment. And then the final one was submitting requests for extra pay for the SAT meetings during duty hours. So
Were the concerns that we've talked about up to this time, did you address and discuss those with Mrs. Souter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Next, if you could turn to Exhibit 154. Okay.
Oh.
154.
Sorry. Okay.
What's Exhibit 154?
It's a post-observation conference, so this was an observation.
Okay, and do you do these routinely for all of your teachers?
On their appraisal year.
Yes. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And so how do you go into one class, or how do you do the observation?
Go into the classroom, observe.
Okay. And can you describe what you were observing as far as the classroom in both this and just in general with Mrs. Souter's classes and students?
Sure. So she when she does her guidance lessons, she'll do kindergarten through 6th grade, and so there's a variety of different ages and a variety of different different lessons throughout the year, and so the lessons are provided by the district. And so she has an opportunity to just use those beautiful lessons and then enhance them. And but they're provided with wonderful, opportunities for engagement, and they have resources, and they have some, materials, and they're provided for her. And so then I go in there and I have those lessons, and so then I can go in there and I can just, go in and observe, and then I write down what I'm seeing, and then I do areas of strengths, and if I see any refinements needed, then that's what I do. So that's what this is.
Okay. And then Exhibit Exhibit 117. Sorry about that.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back to that 1 second.
Yeah.
I forgot to ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
Under 2A on Exhibit 154, you say Mrs. Suter inconsistently addresses the stated student competencies through the school counseling lesson. Can you describe what that problem was? What's that mean?
Okay, so I guess, do you want me to?
Yeah, and you can read specific parts if you want.
Okay.
But maybe give
Sure.
examples of that to the board.
Well, one piece that we're really that we focused on each week at Gilder was learning targets. We just it's such a focus of learning targets to have them posted and really address them throughout the lesson. So we do the 1-2-1 where you state the learning target at the anticipatory set. You then state it again through either the shared, the modeled, the guided, the shared, the modeled, the guided, the independent, that area, and then you're going to state it again in the summary. And so students need to know where they're going, they need to know what they're doing, they need to understand it. And so we're unpacking that learning target throughout the whole lesson. And so learning targets are not posted, they're not stated clearly throughout the lesson. If we don't know as a teacher what our learning target is, if the students don't know what the learning target is, it's going to be very confusing for everyone. And so that to me right there is it's very struggling right off the bat. And so that's really what that's about.
Okay. Then if you want, 1 moment. Okay. If you want to turn to Exhibit 117. And do you know what Exhibit 117 is?
Sure.
And can you tell us what that is?
This was the program of assistance. This was the informal intervention plan.
Okay, and so was that the next step in the process of trying to help?
Yes.
Okay, and can you just describe then what do you do as part of this process?
So this process is the next step where we kind of identify, we need to make a next step. We're going to put some resources in place. We're going to do this intervention, and in hopes that we can kind of put some resources in place and kind of have these conversations and resources and amend kind of the behaviors and deficiencies and get kind of back on the right track.
Okay.
That's the goal.
And is Mrs. Souter provided input or provided a copy of this?
Oh yes, it's a get together. You get together, you talk through this. She can make changes to this. She can add things she hopes to receive. It's just a conversation between both parties, and she can add things. We can add things. We can take things out. We can do a lot of things that we think are going to help to make the next steps and the journey better.
Okay. Then if you want to turn to Exhibit 164. And what is Exhibit 164?
So these are notes from the from the informal intervention.
Okay, and so these were helps that were provided for her in meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
This is just kind of.
please.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't hear what you said.
That's okay, yes.
Okay, thanks.
You were starting to say something. This is.
Yes, these are just notes
Okay.
along the way. Yes.
Okay, so is the goal to try to provide assistance for them to improve?
Assistance, resources. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
All right. So it looks like from Exhibit, the informal intervention, that was to run from December 4th to January 22nd. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. At the end of that intervention period, just generally, what was your conclusion?
The conclusion was that we just didn't see the gains that we were wanting to see.
Okay. So what was the next step?
The next step is that we have a conversation with Human Resources, and we show them our evidence, and then they look through things, and they have a conversation with us, and they kind of make the determining factor with us that next steps need to be a formal intervention.
Okay. And was that the next step taken here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And for sake of time, we'll address that a little bit more with Dr. Bond.
Okay.
But during that intervention period, so was that during the springtime of 2016?
Yes.
Okay. And if you want to turn to Exhibit 133. Can you tell me what Exhibit 133 is?
Absolutely. It's a letter from a teacher given to me.
Okay, and what was the issue here? And
It was just a conversation that she had with Mrs. Souter.
And what was inappropriate that was
What's
mentioned?
inappropriate is that Mrs. Souter just told her, Mrs. Souter was talking to her about one of the students, and Mrs. Souter called the student a weird kid with a lot of issues.
Okay.
And she's the school counselor.
If you want to turn to the next page, 134. And it appears this is dated April 15th, 2016. Can you describe what this document is?
Absolutely. This document is about Mrs. Souter calling our school support liaison. And when she's calling the school support liaison, she's on the telephone, and the 6th grade students are in the room. She's talking on the telephone, and she is saying that the student is being disrespectful. He's acting like he was having sex with a doll. All the students can hear her saying this. And so it's stating this. It's being very disrespectful toward the child, so not really entering in the child's feelings. And then the school support liaison enters the room and to help with the student. And so as she enters the room, Mrs. Souter starts talking again about the student in front of the students, and the school support liaison has to remind Mrs. Souter, let's not speak in front of other students. And so the child is humiliated, and it's just not good judgment.
Okay. Then if you want to turn to the next page, Exhibit 135.
Yes.
What is Exhibit 135?
This is a conversation between our school support liaison and a 5th grade student.
Okay. And it looks like in the second paragraph of what she wrote, that the transcribed from the student. Can you read that into the record?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a student stating this?
Yes.
Okay.
She is rude. Most of the people in our class don't like her at all.
Paragraph above, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. When I ate lunch with her and when it is our time to talk, Miss Souter told me to shut up. I don't even go to the counselor anymore. Every time we go, I go to another class.
Okay. And then if you want to read the next 3 sentences.
She is rude. Most of the people in our class don't like her at all. She went after me. She didn't go after blank and blank. I don't know what's the problem with her, but it's really dumb.
And then if you want to flip to Exhibit 170.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And can you describe what 170 is? It's 2 pages.
This one is, this was a display at parent-teacher conferences. So this was just a table that she had sitting out, and she had some resources for parents. So during the intervention, we just said that you had to have a table out for parents. So we told her that she had to have a table out for resources. And so that was one of her things that she needed to do. And so she did it. And one of the pieces that we reminded her often was that she had a lot of outdated resources for parents in her cottage. And so this was one of the things that she had out. But here you'll see there was still not a current resource up here. The other thing that she had was a printed email. And so sometimes the school counseling, they would send out a resource for the counselors, like, oh, this is a neat resource for families. But instead of cutting and pasting maybe what the resource is and then putting it on a Word document and then maybe printing that, she printed out the email and just printed off a bunch of copies of that. The unfortunate part is on the top of that email, it had lots of email addresses of other people that received that email, and so then anybody that got that handout received all those email addresses, and so that's not really what we want to do, is give all those email addresses out to everybody that got that handout. So,
and then what's the next page?
Okay, so the next page is
the top part is what her room looked like. So that's just a table in the front of her classroom. Just that's what it looks like. Just lots of stuff all over.
Did
Yeah.
that meet your expectations for
No,
OPS?
no.
That doesn't meet any of our classrooms'
Okay.
expectations.
And then, if you want to turn then to exhibit, and I'm sorry I'm flying you
No, you're
through
fine.
those,
You're
but I
fine.
want to respect the board's time. If you want to move then to exhibit 102.
Yes, 102.